Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Vancouver City Council meeting of Tuesday, February 23rd. This meeting is being convened by electronic means under the Ministerial Order M192, and we're all participating remotely. Please note, if my connection is lost during any portion of this meeting, we will recess the meeting until my connection is restored. And if Council loses connection during the voting process, we'll get you back online, but pause the voting process to make sure you can fully participate. And you'll see video of members speaking, presentations, and vote results. And again, just a reminder, Council, that I'm having some video problems today, so you may see me appear and disappear, but I'll always be connected via audio. We want to acknowledge, of course, that we're on the unceded traditional territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and thank them for their generosity to all who live, work, and play on their lands. And just take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver staff who work hard every day to help our city make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. And I think just a shout out today to Sandra Singh and her team at ACCS, who we announced a number of shelters opening yesterday. So that's really good work with lots more to come. So thanks to General Manager Singh and her team. Can we have the roll call, please, Clerk?
Mayor Stewart is in the chair. Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Dejanova.
Present.
Councillor Fry.
Present.
Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato.
Present.
Councillor Bly.
Present.
Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks very much. So I'm just going to go through the plan for the day. Of course, the public is urged to listen to the proceedings via the website or YouTube link and follow along on Twitter at Van City Clerk for updates for the progress of the meeting. The live stream of this meeting is now in both audio and video. Any comments on agenda items can be sent to Council using the web form, and that link is both on Twitter and on the live stream. Also want to note that the City of Vancouver's long-standing commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. So I just wanted to remind Council that at a recent Chairs meeting, we decided that when addressing speakers and staff, we'll avoid using gendered honorifics and instead refer to the person by first and last name or role and title. And that's going to take a little while to perfect. So I'll try my best to remind folks, but of course, would appreciate reminders if you see me slipping too. So thanks again for that. Just before we get into the administrative items, I was talking to a former colleague from an MP who is now saying that the House of Commons is finally moving to remote voting, and I said they could learn a lot from councils who have been doing this now for many, many months. But so thanks to the clerks for getting us up and running and continuing our business through the pandemic. Today we have 3 administrative items: in-camera motion, adoption of minutes, matters adopted on consent. We have 1 communication and 5 reports, 4 bylaws, 1 administrative motion, 4 members' motions, notice of council members' motions, new business inquiries, and other matters. So a plan for today is to go now from 9:30 till noon, and then we'll take a break at lunch from 12 to 1. Go on camera from 1 till 3. We return at 3 p.m. to deal with the remainder of the agenda. And we finish at 3:30 today because we have a court of revision beginning at 4 p.m. And clerks will have to need some time to set up for the meeting. So that's what we've got so far today. And remember, we have a public hearing starting tonight at 7 p.m. Okay, so we're going in camera later this week, and the reasons and authority are under the Vancouver Charter, and they're listed in the agenda. Somebody move a motion to go in camera.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick, seconded by Councillor Dejanova. All in favor, yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Okay, that's passed. Thanks. We're going to go through 2 sets of minutes. Minutes 1 are the minutes of the council meeting of February 9th. Any corrections? And I'll just wait 5 seconds. I don't hear any corrections. Somebody like to move?
Councillor Carr.
Councillor Carr, thanks. And I think I heard Councillor Kirby-Young is a second. So all in favor, yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thanks. Minutes 2 are the minutes of the public hearing of February 9th. Any corrections? Don't hear any, so mover, please.
Hardwick.
Thank you. Seconder? Anybody?
DeGenova.
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova. All in favor, yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so now we're going to consider matters adopted on consent, one communication and reports 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Council may adopt the recommendations in and reports collectively in a single motion. I just take verbally. Does anybody want to hold any of these?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Hardwick.
I would like to hold the quarterly capital budget adjustments and closeouts.
That's number 1. Okay.
Number 1 and number 2, closure and sale of a portion of road adjacent to 2715 West 12th Avenue.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay, I don't hear any others. So does anybody wish to declare a conflict of interest? I don't hear any. So would somebody like to move? Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor DeGenova, thank you very much. All in favor, yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Okay, Council, so we've adopted the Communication 1, amendment to appointment of regional representatives to regional bodies. Sorry, amendment to appointment of council representatives to regional bodies. Report number 3, local government approval of billing rates for projects completed in 2020. Report 4, funding application to the UBCM Emergency Preparedness Fund. And report number 5, funding application to investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for the Carnegie Community Center Restoration Project. So those are all approved. Thank you. So now we're going to move to report number 1, which was held by Councillor Hardwick. Does anybody want to declare a conflict on this one? I don't hear any, so I'm going to move now. Sorry, I'm just going to pull up my queue here. Whoops, I forgot to start my panel. Councillor Hardwick, you held this, so if you want to, we have questions for staff first, right, clerks, before we move this?
That's correct.
Okay, so Councillor Hardwick, there we go. Up to 5 minutes.
So, I've held the quarterlies in previous quarters and over the years since we've been elected. As we know, this is brought forward to staff with capital budget adjustments. And as I'm very, very aware of where we're sitting financially as a city right now, and the fact that we, for example, are drawing $57 million out of reserves this year on the operating side as an offset to having additional property taxes. So I'm concerned when we have the ability to claw back any kind of funds that might be put back into reserves. And so my question to staff is, in the recommendations in the report, given our financial situation right now, what is our rationale for reallocating funds rather than clawing back into reserves?
Thanks, Councillor Hardwick. Paul McCree here, acting city manager, and I'll ask Patrice to jump in on this as well. The report, there are a number of, there's kind of 3 categories of adjustments that are being proposed here. One is to actually implement Council's direction regarding investments in climate change and including money that was allocated in the 2021 budget. There are some additional external funds that are being allocated to certain projects, as well as adjustments for immediate repairs and replacements that need to take place. So those are the general categories. So we do see these all as appropriate given kind of the financial context you cite. But I'll defer to Patrice for any additional context that she wants to provide on that.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It's Patrice Timpey here at CFO. Councillor Hardwick, I just wanted to, just as Paul said, these are specific items. For instance, new money coming in for us to take on projects and align with council priority. But I just wanted to remind council that we did, as part of the budget, we went through a recalibration of the capital plan. So the capital plan, the 2019 to 2022 capital plan, was reduced significantly from its original level. And that prioritization did take place to look at what were the opportunities to delay some projects that could support the operating budget. And we did free up about $8 million for the 2021 operating budget in this year. And that could have gone to reserve, but council chose to use those for a one-time project. So I think council went through that exercise in approving the recalibrated plan, and then in the 2021 budget, we are going to continue to look at that. But I just wanted to assure you that in doing the recalibration, we looked at things like renewal, different funding sources, etc., and looked at the areas where we could free up funding for the operating budget. And make that available. So we'll continue to look at that as we go into the 2022 budget as well. And just wanted to assure you of that. But we did just recently do all of that work.
So if I may continue, as you identified, there's 3 different buckets of funding here. One is accelerate climate change, which, as you say, would align with council priorities. And indeed, we did go through a recalibration process, but council has recently begun to embark early on our considering of the budget going forward and capital plan and financial plans going forward. So we know that where we were when we were considering the recalibration, we have more current information from that than we did then. So number 1 is accelerate action on climate change. 2 is make use of new outside funding, and I don't think anybody's disputing the benefits of using outside funding. Thirdly is adjustments to repair and replacement projects, and I think we'd all agree that emergency repairs to the Stanley Park seawall are warranted. I do question, however, $2.5 million for new activities in respect of active transportation initiatives, and the another $2 million for energy emissions, whether this is something that should be funded at this time or should be considered to be pushed out further given our current financial situations. So could you elaborate, please, more on the rationale of number 1? I don't think anyone's disputing number 2 or number 3 in these circumstances. But again, in light of our deepening financial concerns, might we not consider pushing this out further? Ms. Impey. Oh.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if Lon LeClaire is on the line. You might want to speak to the engineering ones. Otherwise, I can.
Maybe if I could, again, Paul Mokry here, Councillor. I mean, this was money that was specifically allocated by council in the budget that was passed in December. So I think if council wants to revisit that budget, that's your prerogative. But that's where that allocation is coming from. From our staff perspective at this point, we're not recommending a change to that. We're proceeding on the basis of the direction that was issued by council in passing this year's budget.
Would it be possible to clarify?
Sorry, I was just going to add that those items were when council made those adjustments with the $8 million allocating, these are the capital pieces of that allocation, understand? So it is just implementing council's direction from the 2021 budget discussion.
Thank you. So I'll just clarify one more time, stating what you just said, and that these reallocations are part of that $8 million that was clawed back from the capital budget, was not, and council determined not to return.
Sorry, Councillor Hardwick, you're way over time, and I'm sorry I had mute on when I was trying to inform you of that.
Okay, well, I think I'm clear on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks.
And I would just request in the voting on this particular item that we sever.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby-Yung, up to 5.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hardwick sort of touched on a number of my questions, so I'll sort of just ask some additional points. And that she's affirmed that this was council direction, and it primarily the increase here within the typical adjustments resulting from changes between budgeted and actual on projects, or incremental funds or grants that have come in, or things of that nature, really did come from the council direction to use the surplus. My question really is this, and specifically, can staff speak to sort of the tenure of the financial situation that we are looking at, the challenges that we're looking at in terms of reduced revenues this year and heading into next year? And is it likely that we're going to have to make some adjustments? And while we may be looking at this as a quarterly report that council has, we've got, I think, a revenue gap to close because we're not anticipating revenues to rebound back in 2022 later this year. And in fact, we are still having pressures in 2021. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, as we talked about at the budget timeline, we are going to continue to monitor the revenue situation. And again, as with last year, if we need to adjust during the year, we will come back to council to do that. So we are monitoring, and we'll be looking at contingency planning for 2021 as well. So until we see, that we come back to some new normal, we'll continue to monitor really on a regular basis and not wait until we come back with the final budget. So yes, we'll be doing that.
So following up on that, is it conceivable that we may need to make some adjustments within the 2021 year, given that we're in 2 months in now?
At this point, we're not suggesting any specific changes, but we will, continue to monitor depending how long this wave comes and how things unfold for the year. We have projected revenue to be less than previous years, and so it's just a matter of the level of our projection.
Okay, would it improve the gap and the situation that we're facing for the revenue shortfall in 2022 if we were to make adjustments this year?
In capital, it's largely the one-time cost for capital, and so that would impact our reserve levels if we chose to defer something and put our reserves. But yes, obviously, if we deferred other projects, that would impact this year. But through our recalibration, we did really prioritize the ones that were important. And again, in this project, in this report, bringing forward those ones like health and safety, et cetera. So I think we're still being quite prudent. And at this point, not necessarily needing to revisit all of that, but we definitely will have that opportunity.
Okay, I just want to jump in with one other question. And I was unable to find in the report, in the sort of the round amount of around $2.5 million for cycling or pedestrian improvements, but I wasn't able to find detail listing what specific projects that would be. Can you speak to that? It just appears to be allocating a bucket amount to a category, but
yeah,
it doesn't give you an indication of what the projects would be.
Yeah, I don't have that specific. Can we get back to you on that? Yeah.
Would you be able to do that before we vote this morning or no? Hello? Can you hear me?
We probably need a few minutes.
Okay, I'll save another minute for now. Thanks.
Councillor Dejanova.
Thanks very much. I have a question first for our acting city manager, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just further to some of Councillor Hardwick's questions, and specifically looking at sort of the priorities of council. I also understand the financial strain on the city and the fact that we do have to pay back everything that we were able to utilize from reserves because of the unique amendments that were made by the provincial government, allowing local governments to structure their financing differently. However, I'm also wondering about priorities. So when we talk about accelerating climate change, I also understand that the motion that I had brought forward that was unanimously passed by council on asking staff to report back on looking at incentivizing and creating more child space and our investments to this in the city of Vancouver, that would be done in 2019. So I'm just wondering, when can we expect that to come back if we're accelerating some work but not others, yet childcare is in the top priorities of City Council. So I'm just trying to understand how these priorities, we're choosing to accelerate them over other priorities that this council has.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor DeGenova. I think in this case, there was a specific allocation of funds that council approved in last year's budget, and this adjustment that we're bringing forward today simply implements that. So the acceleration was based on a specific decision by council to allocate money. So that's why this is showing up in this case. I think there's lots of work that's going on that staff are doing around childcare for sure, and a number of projects that we're bringing forward in conjunction with the province, and a huge amount of kind of funding that we've been able to obtain from the province to support childcare projects. So I'm not sure there's an apples to apples comparison there. I certainly understand the question, but yeah, specifically in relation to the capital plan adjustments that are being before you today, the climate change funding was a reflection of a decision by council in December.
Okay, thanks very much. And further to Councillor Kirby-Young's question, I'm wondering if Ms. Impey has that answer ready. If not, I'd be inclined to, I see Councillor Carr on the queue after me, but to go after her, and if the information is still not available, to postpone this decision until such time where that information is available. So I'll put myself on the queue underneath Councillor Carr. Thank you.
Councillor Carr, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, first of all, I just want to...
Wait, hold on. Not Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, that's
yes,
okay.
Mayor Stewart, thank you. We are all working at this. Thank you. And first of all, we have, let's be clear, we made a decision in December at the budget time. Staff are implementing it. And, you know, I really think people should recognize if we question every single decision like that, we will never get through agendas in this meeting. It's really important that we recognize that that decision was made, and it was made in a wise way. Our actions around climate, if anybody is not fully on board with it, are really there for a reason. Because climate change is accelerating, the impacts are becoming worse and worse, and the cost of actually dealing with changed climate versus trying to prevent changed climate are a lot more. The examples I can give, I mean, you just have to read the news. Look what Texas is going through. The unprecedented cold and snowstorms there have shut down the power grid with millions of people affected. The costs of repair are phenomenal. So you know, in terms of, it seems like, okay, investing in cycling routes now seems maybe to some people like not a priority. Let me tell you, everything we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is absolutely a priority. We have to reduce in the city. We have made the commitment to be 50% lower in our GHG.
Councillor Carr, this is a question section, so we haven't yet moved the motion. So if you have it was a little lengthy of a preamble. If you've got a question, that would be great. Otherwise, we have to wait for debate until the motion's moved.
Oh, okay, and I can't move it yet. All right. Okay,
well,
that's fine.
You can. Anybody can move it at any time.
Okay, I would like to move the motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
Second, why?
Okay. Now I'll put us on the main queue, and now this is for debate and decision, and we have Councillor DeGenova on up to 5 minutes. Go ahead, Councillor DeGenova.
Thanks. I mean, I tried to be polite and not move the motion, noting my intention. In the end, it was not a 2-minute preamble, but that said, I'll just remember that next time round and move the motion regardless of if someone's on the queue. So I'm just wondering if that information is available. It was requested earlier, or if I should amend this to postpone.
And so that's a point of information?
That is.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, for saying that before I had to note it.
Right. And so I guess the city staff.
Yeah. I think Lon LeClaire has a comment on the project. Lon, if you're on.
Yes. Good morning, Mayor Council. Lon LeClaire, General Manager of Engineering Services. So we're in terms of the amount of projects that we identified as potential as part of the climate emergency was quite a bit bigger. This is a scaled back version that council has kind of approved for us to work within. So the specific projects that we would identify to invest in are something that's underway right now. We would look for the best bang for the buck within the approved budget that we received from council.
Councillor Dejanova. Councillor Dejanova. Councillor Dejanova. Clerks, I see Councillor Dejanova on the is phoning in.
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm not phoning.
Okay. Well, you're just wondering if that answer was complete.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Sorry, Mayor Stewart.
That's right.
I just I had some technical difficulties.
Sure.
I'm not calling in, but I may have to call in if this continues. So I will defer to whoever is next on the queue, and I will put myself back on. If not,
there's nobody else on the queue.
Okay, so I that's fine. Then I won't postpone.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Kirby-Yung, I just see you dropped on there. Up to 5 minutes for debate and decision.
Yeah, thank you. I think these are really important debates anytime we're dealing with taxpayer funds and funds that we have hardworking businesses and residents are contributing to us, and particularly during a pandemic. I think that it's never think it's a bad thing to have dialogue and debate and discussion on these items. And I would hope, and I'll state as a point of privilege, that we can sort of, respectfully honor procedures and give every councillor that may be on a list the same opportunity to ask questions. It's an environment I prefer to work within when we can stick with our procedures there, as opposed to sort of peremptorily moving a motion, because I think it's important. And I will note that previously that was a split vote. So yes, it may have been direction of council, but that doesn't mean that all councillors necessarily were of the same view. What I want to state with respect to this particular report is that our financial picture is not improving. Unfortunately, the pandemic is extending longer than we had anybody had hoped and anticipated. And the financial impacts of that are very real, and they are being felt this year in the budget, and as was noted, with a $57 million drawdown from reserves, and then the additional $8 million that majority of council elected to spend. And we are not looking at a rosy picture for 2022. We know that venue openings are likely to be delayed. There's still going to be restrictions on things like events, which impact things like civic theaters. People are not going back into classes at the same way in community centers. Parking revenues are impacted as people continue to work from home. There's some bright spots with things like people getting out in parks and playing golf more. But certainly we have some very real pressures here, and it's a fluid and evolving situation with the pandemic. We did approve the budget sort of mid-December, which is about almost 3 months ago now. And I think we need to continue to look at this. So I think it's good due diligence to ask these questions. I do have concerns that we're going to have to make some tough choices soon. And I think if we don't point that out, and we're not very cognizant of that and asking questions as we move through and look for opportunities where it may be the responsible thing to adapt and to have those conversations about trading off choices, then we're not doing our due diligence, and we're not also conveying a realistic picture to the residents of Vancouver of the challenges that we have to face, and that we will get through it. But this is probably one of the biggest financial challenges I think that has faced the city of Vancouver. So I would never apologize for having a dialogue and a discussion about that. I think it's critically important that we do that. There are a number of formal adjustments and closeouts in here. I'll also note in the additional $8.4 million from reserves that there were some really important and valid items in there with respects to things like street cleaning, which is critically important, and others that we need in the city. However, I don't think that it should have had to come from additional $8 million reserves. I think a lot of core needs like that, we should have been able to include those in the original budget process. And that is my challenge and my issue with how that rolled out. It's not whether or not there's merit in these particular items. It is the fact that there are some fundamentally important things there, especially things like sanitation during a pandemic, that were under-resourced, and that should have been included in the regular budget as opposed to council cherry picking and taking some money from reserves. And our reserves will be, and we know that, it's no secret, at an all-time low for the city of Vancouver. And if the pandemic continues, we have another emergency, we have major snowfall days, we will be out of funds with that. And let me say that again, we could conceivably in 2022, if we have major incidences, if revenues continue to go down, or there's other drawdowns on those reserves, we may have no cushion. And I think it's really, really critical to state that. So again, this is not to me about whether there are valid initiatives and projects in the 8.4 million. Of course there are, that rallied from reserves. It was about the fact that I don't think that should have come from reserves, and that should have been a more robust budgeting process to do it within an existing and a reasonable budget process and envelope, not just for council to go shopping, if you will, for additional things to add in at the end. So that's my challenge around this. It's not that council isn't following direction, or staff, I should say, I misspoke, are not following the direction of council. They are. It's not that they're following procedure in the quarterly closeouts. They are. But I think it behooves us to point out the fact that there are ramifications to these choices and how we manage the budget. And I think that's important to state on the record. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks. I've got myself on the list. If I could, Councillor Carr, if you could become chair for 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Mayor Stewart, go ahead.
Thanks. I do have a point of information I'd like to ask the city manager, if that's okay. Okay. City manager, what happens if this doesn't pass today?
Thanks through you, Chair Carr. So these investments that are set out here, we wouldn't be making them. So the various projects that are defined here would not proceed. I think in some cases, there's grants that are in play or external funding, so we wouldn't move forward with those. So essentially, we wouldn't be in a position without council's approval to move forward with the work that's articulated here.
If I could just ask another question, is there matching or contributions from senior levels of government that we would forego if we in any of these projects if we were not to proceed today?
There is one grant from UBCM. There is funding from Fortis BC. Those are the two external funding. As I understand, I defer to Patrice to add any additional context there. That's my understanding.
Thanks. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I could add maybe, Mayor Stewart, that some of these are maintenance projects, and so from a safety point of view, though, that wouldn't move forward.
Okay, thanks so much. Council, I know I agree it is good to debate and understand what these issues are, but and I do think we are facing challenging financial times, but I am worried about unnecessarily delaying capital projects for a couple of reasons. Last year, our unemployment rate was 14%. It is thankfully down to about 7% at the moment, but there are a lot of jobs attached to these projects. I'm not one for austerity when you're in a recession. I think you need to stimulate the economy. And in conversations with the national government, there are a lot of funds both to stimulate during COVID and post. So I think it would be the wrong signal to vote against this, as we'll be facing in a few minutes. It would send a wrong signal that things aren't good and we're embracing more of an austerity approach. So I would, of course, will be voting for this, as well as trying to seek funds from senior levels of government for additional infrastructure investments. That's all I have to say. So can I take the chair back, Chair Carr?
Absolutely, Mayor
Thanks.
Stewart.
And you're up next. Oh, and you're up next. Okay, up to 5. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to some of the comments made by my colleagues, especially around the idea of the fact that there are ramifications to choices. I agree they are, and I think discussions are important. Ramifications to choices, I think, are not just about, though, the immediate timeline that we're in. It's not within one budget year. It's not within a term of council. When it comes to climate change, I think the ramification of choices has an impact that is generational, and that's the reason why we need to think very carefully. Perhaps the information that would be good to have at some future time is, what would the cost be to the city if climate change went on unabated, and that we didn't meet our 50% reduction of GHGs by 2030, or the planet itself didn't achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, which scientists globally are saying we must do to avoid the worst of the impacts. So it seems like in a short-term thinking, putting money into, cycling infrastructure and alternative modes of transport, which allow us to reduce GHGs, might seem like it's not the right choice. But if you think longer term, you think about the goal, which is to reduce GHGs. The biggest, COVID is horrible, but climate change is the biggest catastrophe that this world is facing. And I believe our obligation to do everything we can in our term of office to ensure we are setting a course to achieve what scientists say is needed to reduce GHGs to a level that we avoid the worst outcomes of climate change. So that's why I believe we have to think, bigger picture in terms of the choices we make. Yes, the ramifications are important, but let's think bigger picture in terms of those ramifications as well. And I encourage fellow councillors to do the same on this particular set of recommendations. Go with making sure we invest the money that we have said and made a decision already we are going to invest in climate mitigation.
Sorry, Councillor Hardwick, up to 5.
Thank you. I'd like to make it quite clear, as I thought I did earlier, that there were items in here where there were funds coming from other levels of government and organizations, and there were legitimate repairs and replacements. There are various parts to this report, and they should be unpacked and not treated all as one thing. Everyone wants to save the planet, but we have a question of balance here in our city's finances, and the stark reality is that we are in the second year of a pandemic where we've got a very serious financial situation before us. Not just in the fact that we have continued to significantly erode our reserves to the point where we can see a possibility of running out of reserve money. And I know there are those that think we could spend all the money in the world within our 115 square kilometers to delay the impacts of climate change. But the reality is we're talking about quarterly reports here, and we're talking about millions of dollars that are coming from our tax-paying citizens. And if we are not looking at where we can press the pause button to try and get ourselves into balance, I would say that we are likewise being irresponsible to our future getting out of this pandemic. And so it's not an either or situation here, folks, but the question is really one of balance. And how are we going to move forward in a balanced way without further eroding our reserves? So when I see this report, and I don't want to be seeing that we're adding money to our capital budget or adding money to our financial plan going forward over the next couple of years. I want to see us pressing pause and figuring out what we can do to hold the line until we can, again, get into balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weep.
Yeah, I'll be voting for the support, and I really want to thank staff for bringing some of these to us as quickly as possible. I think the work in Manitoba Fuel Yard is important to ensure we protect the groundwater and look at green energy moving forward. I think the work in Stanley Park, I think a lot of this is critical. It's good to see us moving so quickly to get things done. Something we hear from the public a lot is that we need to start to deliver and ensure that we are getting work done on the ground, and I see this doing that. So I will be supportive, and I think these funds are important.
Thanks so much. Councillor Dejanova, you got 3 minutes left.
Thanks very much. I I just wanted to say I think there were some very well made points already, and I won't spend a lot of time reiterating this, but as we talk about the planet we want to leave for future generations, I think we also have to consider whether or not those generations will be able to afford to live in the city of Vancouver. I very clearly supported the goals and the reports, the policy reports by staff, even the member motion to accelerate climate change in the city of Vancouver. But I amended it, and I was happy to see that that amendment passed unanimously and that it would balance affordability. And I think that it is really important that we consider the fact that we have to do our part as a council, but there's other ways to look at that. And one of the ways that we can do that is working with senior levels of government. We can continue on some of the initiatives that we've already moved forward. But I do think that we need to right now consider the fact that not only did we need to scramble to move forward quickly with a plan, just as other local governments had, to refinance, due to the pandemic. The fact is in our city, that is named consistently as one of the least affordable in the world, this is something we also have to consider that future generations will inherit. And this is the balance that I think that we need to consider here. So for that reason, I will be asking to sever and voting against a portion of this report, as I had at budget time as well. So if we could please sever, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. And I don't see anybody else on the list, so let's move to the vote. Just a request, how do people want to sever this?
For me, it's recommendation A.
Okay, so.
But Councillor Hardwick had a request, and I'm not sure if it's exactly the same.
Councillor Hardwick, is that what you're looking for as well, that we would sever out A as a separate vote?
Is it possible to do the subsets A, B, C of A?
We can
separately?
check. I can just check with the clerks. I believe so, but I'll just check with the clerks. Yeah, we can sever that out. So, so we would have to put, I think, AA first. So large letter A, small letter A is the first vote. The second vote would be on just on the letter B, and then the third vote would be on C, and then we could group B and C together as a fourth vote. Does that sound okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll start with the first vote, which is AA.
Point of privilege, can we get this up on the screen, Swanson?
Sure. We are in the middle of voting, but if you need that assistance, Councillor Swanson, I can ask the clerks to pull that up on screen. Right, okay, so that has passed with Councillor Hardwick and Councillor Dejanova in opposition. So that was letter AA, and now under section A, we're going to be voting on letter B. Councillor Swanson, I have you down as declared conflict. Is that correct?
I don't know how that happened.
I think you can still change.
I never said that I had a conflict.
Okay, yes. So did you want, how did you want your vote recorded?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, that's.
Oh, but when I click in favor, the declared conflict lights up. Maybe that's it.
Okay, well, we have you marked in favor, and I'll continue to check in. Clerks, if you could pull these votes up on screen, and we have that has passed with Councillor Hardwick in opposition. Now we're going to vote on under section A, subsection C. Waiting for Councillor Wiebe. And that's passed with none in opposition. We're going to move to uppercase letter B now.
Mayor Stewart, was that B and C together?
B and C together. That's correct. Thank you. Sorry, clerks. I think we should need to reset the voting. Just I've noticed that. Yeah, there we go. Thanks. Okay, Council, go ahead. Vote on B and C together. Okay, so that's passed unanimously. Thanks, Council. And that finishes that item. Councillor Hardwick, you held report number 2, which is the closure and sale of a portion adjacent to 2715 West 12th Avenue.
Thank you. I have questions of staff.
Sure, I'll just check with the city manager to make sure that we have the appropriate staff here.
Thanks, Mayor Stewart. Just looking at that now.
Right, now we can hold on for a sec while you check.
Yeah. We do have Mr. Claron for engineering, or Lon LeClaron for engineering. So I think, Mayor, maybe if we could get the question or questions.
Great.
As soon as we proceed.
Okay, Councillor Hardwick, please go ahead.
My first question is, was an appraisal done? And was it appraised as CD1 or RS7?
And I'll put it to the city manager.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Hardwick may not be able to talk about the details of the appraisal.
Well, it wasn't included in the report, which is why I'm asking the question.
It just might be an in-camera matter, but of course, whether or not we got an appraisal would be, I think that would be public, although I'll leave it to the city manager to.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think the question is, the advice from Real Estate Services is that the amount reflects fair market value. So I would defer to, if we've got staff on from Real Estate who can speak to the determination of that fair market value amount. And it may be here that I have jumped the gun.
I'd appreciate it because this relates.
The right staff on the call. I see that we've got some folks on, but.
Okay.
It relates to a later item, the administrative report, which is why I was hoping to have it answered now.
Understood. So we may need a second, Mayor, to get those staff on.
Okay. No problem. I'll just pause your timer, Councillor Hardwick. If we can wait for a second to get the staff on.
And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Newman from Real Estate will be joining us momentarily. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, thank you.
Nick, are you on the line now?
Hi, Rosemary. Yes, I'm just getting Andrew Newman, who's worked on this transaction. He's just going to get on in a minute here.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I see that Andrew Newman has now joined the call.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if, for his benefit, if Councillor Hardwick wouldn't mind repeating her questions.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
My question is, was an appraisal done on 2715 West 12th Avenue? And was it appraised as CD1 or RS7? And are we getting fair market value? And the reason for the question was that it was not included in the report.
Hi, Councillor Hardwick. Yes, an internal appraisal was done. Our staff are very much in the know on current market values. It would have taken into account the base zoning condition, and so that would have been the basis of it. But no third-party independent appraisal was completed on that property.
Is this our regular practice, or under what circumstances do we go out externally for validation?
Generally speaking, if it's over $1 million, we will go out for third-party validation. If it's under $1 million, we will do it in-house.
So the funds here, in this case, $320,000, are earmarked for the Property Endowment Fund. Is that correct?
That's correct. If it's a road closure and sale, policy is for those lands that are ancillary to be any sale proceeds to go into the PEF.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry to delay, but I'm happy with the answers. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Would you care to move the report, Councillor Hardwick?
Yes, certainly. I move the report.
Thanks. We have a seconder.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bly. Great. So I'll just move to the main queue. Any discussion on this item before I move to a vote? I don't see any, so I'm just going to ask the clerks to queue the voting.
Mayor?
Yes?
I'm having technical difficulties getting up the vote. I just got kicked off the
Okay.
voting screen.
Okay, would you like to vote assist then?
Yeah, please, a vote assist in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dejanova. There we go. That's passed unanimously. Thanks so much. Okay, Council. So that's it for held reports. We're next moving to bylaws. We have 4 bylaws on the agenda. Council members who were not present for the meetings related to the public hearing enactment of bylaws must confirm they've reviewed the proceedings of the meetings if they wish to vote. Bylaws 1, 2, and 3 are from the public hearing of February 9th. I was absent for the items at the public hearing, and I have reviewed the proceedings and I will vote. Does any member wish to hold any of the bylaws for debate, separate vote, or for conflict of interest? Somebody like to move then adoption of bylaws 1 to 4?
So moved, Councillor Dejanova.
Thank you. Seconder?
Swanson.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? I don't see anybody on the queue, so all those in favor say yay.
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 Opposed say nay. Okay, that's passed. Thanks very much. The list of approved bylaws can be found on the city website. Okay, moving on to the administrative motion. There's one on the agenda. Resolution closure and sale of portion of road adjacent to 2715 West 12th Avenue. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest? Other questions to staff? Councillor Hardwick, you have questions on this one?
No, this is related to the last set of questions that I had. And
Okay.
so given that, I'm happy to move this administrative report.
Thanks very much. Seconder?
Councillor Bly.
Okay, so Councillor Hardwick, I have you on the queue for discussion. Did you want to say anything about this?
No, that was just me making the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Anybody else? I don't see anybody on the queue. So we'll call the vote. All those in favor say yay.
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 Opposed say nay. Great, so that passes unanimously. So now we're moving to council members' motions. 4 members' motions on the agenda today. The first one is a leave of absence for Councillor Dejanova for civic business for meetings on June 9th from 12:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Would someone like to move this, please?
So moved.
I think I heard Councillor Kirby-Young first with Councillor Hardwick as seconder. All those in favor, yay?
It was Councillor Carr.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Carr. Okay, Councillor Carr with Councillor... Sorry,
Hardwick.
Hardwick. Yes, okay, thanks. All those in favor, yay?
Yay.
Opposed, nay? Great, thanks. The second motion 2 is closing the inequality gap with paid sick leave. A motion moved by Councillor Swanson. Councillor Swanson, you have up to 2 minutes to speak to this item, and there'll be questions. I think you're on mute.
COVID has really shown how people who do the really important frontline work are really important in our society. The people that grow the food, process it, sell it in grocery stores, the people that work in nursing homes, farm workers, people that work in stores. And COVID has also revealed how important paid sick leave is, and how if people had paid sick leave, they would be able to stay home and not spread germs. And so I'm hoping that this is just a simple advocacy motion to the province, but I'm hoping it can be a win that we get out of COVID, that we actually get something that protects vulnerable workers. And I know there's a concern about small business, and I've suggested an amendment to Councillor Wiebe, which I would be happy to support. Just as we, as a city council, we're committed to equity, and this would be a way of making equity concrete and getting better conditions for thousands of our residents in our own city that don't have paid sick leave.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. You do have questions. Councillor Dejanova, up to a minute.
Thanks so much, Councillor Swanson. Have you spoken to staff, because it does ask council to affirm a number of things to state our position on them? If this would at all be an HR matter or affect the HR of our own staff?
No, but when the staff responded to the motion, they didn't have any issues with it.
Okay, I think Councillor Dominato and I had both brought it up. Had you also thought about sort of including beyond COVID-19, you know, looking at parental leave as well? I know that this is something that has come up several times, but looking at different ways of considering equity in our leave at the city and throughout the province.
Parental leave is great, but this motion is about sick leave.
No, you had also mentioned an equity lens. That's why I asked.
Just 5 seconds.
So I'll ask the rest of my questions tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Bly, up to a minute.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Swanson, for bringing this forward. I'm wondering if you could comment on the recent comments by our Premier, John Horgan, that he believes this is a federal gap, and that as Premier of BC, that his government's prepared to fill the gaps that the federal government are not able to do, and that his viewpoint is that this should not actually be falling on the small business owners.
The BC Federation of Labor has suggested a way of dealing with the impact on small business, which I've suggested to Councillor Wiebe, so maybe he will like to make that amendment. Is that what
Okay,
you're?
I'm not aware of the amendment, so I will wait to see that, but it is a consideration. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor, we have up to a minute. Questions to Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, and I appreciate you're working, recognizing the small business component. There's a lot of people in precarious working situations that also feel that this won't be available to them. A lot of contract workers and workers that work on their own. How do you see that we can make that equity work with this motion?
I know previously when we were considering a motion on Uber, I tried to amend it to, or I did amend it to ask the province to make those workers employees rather than contract workers. So I think the idea is that sick leave should apply to everybody. And if we push forward with this, that's hopefully we can get it so that it does apply to everybody. We just have to keep pushing for it.
So you don't think that employers might ask for more people to be contract workers because of the cost that this might put onto their small business?
Just
Well, I'm thinking we
1
need
second.
to get contract workers covered too.
Thanks. That's it for time. Thank you very much. I don't see anybody else on the queue. So, so would someone
I
like to
moved
second?
that we.
I'm happy to second Boyle.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. We've received requests to speak. So, Councillor Swanson, you've moved to refer this till tomorrow, and this would be coming back to the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting Wednesday, February 24th, tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So move, or do you have a second?
I'll second that too.
Thanks. All in favor say yay.
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 Opposed say nay. Okay, thanks. And if I have a motion that I'd be speaking to, so Councillor Carr, if you could, Deputy Mayor, if you could take over the chairing duties.
Yes, fine. Mayor Stewart, no problem. Motion 3 is commemorating COVID-19 in the City of Vancouver. The motion is to be moved by Mayor Stewart. Mayor Stewart, you have up to 1 minute to introduce your motion.
I have 2 minutes.
Sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Right, Council, so this is a pretty simple motion, but I believe the one is very important given how disruptive COVID has been to our city, its residences and businesses. As the motion outlines, the WHO declared COVID-19 a global pandemic on March 11, 2020. If you can believe it, it's almost been a year. And just a few days later, on March 19th, we declared our first ever state of local emergency. So everybody's lives have been turned upside down with this, and sometimes you just get numb to it. But many of us have been doing okay through this, but lots haven't been. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress on folks' mental health. So, lots of people have lost their job. I did mention earlier that our unemployment rate had hit a rate of 14%. Lots and lots of stress. Some have lost their homes, and of course, many have lost their lives. So we've been, I think, doing a good job as a city. We've kind of hung together through this and have been faring better than many places in the world. But we heard through the pandemic, we've heard stories about young people who have organized teams to get groceries to elders in our communities. We've heard about neighbors coming together, making sure that those who are living alone felt less isolated. We heard about restaurants donating food and supplies to people in need, and we've worked very, very hard to put housing in place for those who have been impacted. So, we talk about moving to the new normal, but I think we as a city have a duty to recognize, commemorate what's been lost, but also to look about moving forward. So. What I would like to do is to have staff look for opportunities to think about celebration and commemoration after we feel that it's safe to do so. I don't think this will take a lot of time, and I'm not thinking there'll be a lot of cost, but I do think we can talk to private organizations as well to think about how do we work in conjunction with others to make this happen. So I hope you'll support this motion.
Right.
Second, Councillor Carrillo.
We're not there yet. Perfect timing. Council, first, are there any questions for Mayor Stewart?
Yes, it's Councillor Dominato. I'm on the queue.
I see. I can't move you forward, Councillor Dominato, but I think the clerk will do so, and you have up to 1 minute to ask your questions.
Thanks. Yes, Mayor, thank you for the motion. I'm just curious if you could expand on your vision for commemoration of COVID-19 and what that might look like.
My vision at the moment is that we just take some input from the community to see what might be appropriate. I mean, we're not out of this yet. We're still waiting for vaccines. So we really want to be respectful to make sure that we don't count our chickens before they hatch, but to think about and to talk with other cities, the province, the feds, even internationally, to see what kind of commemorations and celebrations might be planned, and then try to coordinate the best we can. So that's all it is. That's my thoughts at the moment, but happy for input from council. Just thought we should think a little hopeful thought as we move forward with the regular business that we do here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was your 1 minute. Thanks, Councillor Dominato. I do not see anyone else on the queue, so Mayor.
I'll second it, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. That's great. We have a seconder. We have
Move referral
received.
to committee.
That's right.
Councillor
Thank you
Deschanel.
very much. You are going faster than the speed of lightning. This needs to be a seconder for the referral.
Councillor Dominato.
Thank you. All those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed say nay. That has been referred. Mayor Stewart, over to you to resume the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor Carr. Excellent work. Coming back to motion number 4, developing a city framework for leveraging and nurturing of a social impact investment community to amplify social and environmental outcomes. And this is moved by Councillor Bly. So Councillor Bly, you have up to 2 minutes to state your case.
Thanks very much, Mayor. So as we plan for recovery from the social, psychological, health, and financial impacts of COVID-19, it's become even more apparent that the existing funding framework for the City of Vancouver is too reliant on property taxes. Our budgets are reliant on a funding tool that can only be turned up and prompts frequent political clashes, especially when taxpayers don't always see the benefits of their investment. Property tax as a sole funding tool is not an equitable or strategic approach to financing the services provided by the city, and we continue to raise them to an uncertain end. It's clear that the city needs to diversify and expand its municipal funding tools, and that is a gap that social impact investing can help address. Social impact funding strategies combine charitable, private, and government capital to achieve specific and measurable outcomes that offer the opportunity for return on investment if these positive outcomes are achieved. A variety of different forms, such as the Mayor of London's Energy Efficiency Fund or the Activate program with the Heart and Stroke Foundation, have seen much success. The motion itself asks staff to report back to council on a framework for the city to utilize similar opportunities that can supplement our existing funding framework. I want to emphasize that my motion does not intend to reduce or replace public funding for successful services that the city provides, but instead intends to utilize the grant framework that already exists to highlight service areas that staff identify as underfunded, and which could benefit from funding from the city and additional investors the City of Vancouver can leverage into partnerships. This will give services that are currently underfunded or unfunded the ability to scale their impact, which the city is currently unable to financially support alone due to its municipal funding restrictions, and provide us better information on when we are meeting our own set objectives. We need to think creatively and mindfully outside the box, since the increasing social needs and their programs in our city are outpacing what we can reasonably expect to fund from ratepayers alone. This motion is simply asking for staff to come back with a framework that is right for the City of Vancouver and that allows us flexibility in expanding our impact in our communities.
Thanks. And that's the 2 minutes. And you do have some questions, Councillor Dejanova, up to a minute.
Thanks, Councillor Bly. I understand you said the only mechanism causes clashes. I didn't see anything in your motion. It was something that I had moved forward with last term, and I was really happy to see it carried forward this term with policy, although we had to postpone it a few times with the citywide sponsorship policy. So I'm just wondering how the components of your motion are any different than that, specifically for private sponsorship or charitable sponsorship, considering our citywide sponsorship policy.
Well, yes, I mean, that's a much bigger question. Of course, sponsorship and investments are fundamentally different. This is not speaking to sponsorship at all. This is about investments into social issues and environmental issues separate from any corporate sponsorship that you might be referring to.
And sponsorship can be investments. I will have some more questions for you on that, and I'll ask them through points of information, I suppose, tomorrow.
Thanks. Councillor Kirby-Yung, up to a minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Bly, I know that social impact investing is in sort of its infancy, and so it's not as tangible, I think, for a lot of people. I wonder if you can give some specific examples of projects that might come to fruition with this type of framework from a city perspective.
Well, yes, and it's a great question. Thank you. So there are a number of examples provided in the motions. I'm sure you've read, Councillor Kirby-Yung, that I will highlight. London, UK were able to utilize this kind of investment framework in order to reduce carbon emissions by 40,000 tons and grew into the more expansive energy efficiency fund. And what they were able to do is actually raise about $20 million and reach their targets in half the time. And it was proven a great success that they made this a permanent framework within. Another example is the province of Manitoba has a program to keep Indigenous mothers and their babies together. And that was really the outcome that was desired. And through this framework, they were able to reach those outcomes and create a very positive impact in many communities across the province.
Thanks. That's the minute. That's the minute. I know it's very short time. Councillor D'Abonado, up to a minute.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Bly, for the motion. I'm curious if you could comment on, we've had correspondence from a number of the unions reflecting that this is just another form of privatization. If you could comment on and expand on the bonds.
Well, yes, and again, thank you for the question. This framework, social impact investing, is actually distinct from social impact bonds in that the municipality, so local government, us, the City of Vancouver, continues to participate in the return to investors once those outcomes are reached, which is very distinct from bonds. And again, I just want to underscore that privatization of current services, like we've seen in healthcare and other industries, is of course something that we need to keep our eye on and raises many concerns. This is different in that we are looking to see where are we not able to accurately fund or adequately fund programs that could benefit from a capital investment that could have a benefit to those outcomes of those programs.
I think we're just at a minute.
Thank you.
Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. To follow up on that, what's an example of a service area, which you've noted, that's the language you've used, or a program that could receive this funding that would be able to maintain a return on investment to the investors?
Well, I think that is also a very good question. And housing, of course, for the City of Vancouver would be the first to come to mind, affordable housing, that is. And we are struggling to be able to bring a substantial amount of units and below market housing to market. I note that one of our major developments that's in Shape Your City right now has, I think, out of 600 or 700 units of market housing, have only 37 units of below market housing, and that's an example of where we're just not anywhere near able to do what we need to be doing in order to provide for housing. And McKinsey, there's a McKinsey report out in New York.
Sorry, it's just a minute.
Dealt with housing in New York.
Thanks. It's so fast, I know. Councillor Boyle, up to a minute.
Thanks. My question is, it was outlined to me that in most of these types of programs, the expectation of return is between 5 and 30%. And I guess I'm wondering if you see risk in inserting that type of profit motive into the equitable delivery of public services.
Well, again, this would be a framework that would be available. It's a tool in our toolbox. It's not one that would be solely used. I think that's important. And when we talk about return, we really need to talk about risk. Investors will assess risk, and the return ought to respond to that level of risk. But we would be in control of that as a municipality. in terms of what projects we would like to utilize or we would like to have benefit from this type of framework. It may not be suited for all, and we need to be careful that inequitable access to services is again at the forefront of how we make these decisions, but it opens up our options and creates more flexibility.
Thanks. I just have a question as well. I was interested in your example of the program in Manitoba with uniting families and supporting Indigenous families. Would you have any idea what the rate of return was on that for the group that undertook that work?
No, I don't have that information, but I can certainly find out and see if it could be available for tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be great. And I do, I think of the areas we have so much trouble, funding, the money really comes from governments. So are you thinking that those involved would receive government funding, or is this from private individuals?
You mean in terms of the investment, in terms of the investor portfolio?
Yeah.
Well, the investors could very well be government for sure. It's about it's about creating partnerships. So there's no reason why you couldn't have a federal government participating as in partnership with. There were.
Sorry, we're at the one.
Sorry. I want to keep talking about this all day.
I have to constrain myself there. Councillor Fry, up to a minute.
Yeah. So are you concerned that through this financialization model, and in particular the financialization of sort of public services, that we're creating a climate where we're not solving problems necessarily, but we're actually creating an industry where there's a rate of return expected by investors, and they'll want to keep the status quo to continue their rate of return rather than fix a problem permanently?
No, I think that investors are always looking for different opportunities, and we know that the world of investment has changed from a money-making venture to there being a greater sense of social responsibility in terms of where people would like to invest their funds. We know that Vancouver has a lot of homegrown success stories, and they are constantly participating in public art and other ways in which they can benefit and give back to the city where they feel like they have managed to build their lives. So I think there's lots of opportunities here.
Okay, thanks so much. That's it for questions. So do we have a seconder for this motion?
Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Thanks. And we do have speakers to this, so we can have a mover to hear from the speakers. Yep, thank you, Councillor Wiebe. Seconder?
Second, Cower.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, yay.
Yay. Yay.
Opposed, nay. Great. Okay, so that's moved over. Council, we are now on, whoops, I've got my scripts mixed up here. Council, we do have a chance to get to in camera a little early today. So just to let you know, we're hoping we might be able to move in camera at 11. But of course, we have just a little bit more of the agenda to get through. And then we would take our regular break at noon. We are on now notice of council member motion. So just a reminder to put yourself on the queue to give notice, and it's just the title we're looking for, and to email it into the clerk. Councillor Kirby-Yung?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have two. The first one is titled Understanding COVID-19 Recovery Through Economic and Cultural Stimulus Projects. And the second notice of motion is entitled Turning Construction Hoarding into a Canvas for Public Art in Vancouver.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swanson?
Solidarity with Indian farmers.
Okay, Councillor Fry?
I have two. Number one, granting minor encroachments for Vancouver firefighter charities clothing banks on public right-of-ways. And number two is please don't feed the wildlife.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. Mine is a UBC resolution submission, local choice, tools to improve representation in local government elections.
Okay, thank you. And that's it for that section. So council, we're going to do new business inquiries and other matters. We're just going to segment this out and do new business first. And then we'll move to inquiries, and I'll just let you know when that happens. So if you have new business, please put yourself on the queue. We do have one item, though. We have a request for a leave of absence For Councillor Boyle, February 24th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Somebody like to move this motion?
So moved, Councillor
Sec
DeJarmo.
Thanks. Seconder?
Second, Councillor Carr.
Thanks. All in favor, yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Thanks. That's passed. Councillor Swanson, I have you on for new business.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a minute to do two things here. I want to recognize and celebrate 3 precious humans who would probably be alive today if we didn't have poverty, colonization, and poison drugs. Delvina Martin Hackett actually hated drugs and tried really hard to avoid alcohol. Her brother wrote a moving tribute to her, saying she was sober for 3 years at one point. She fought tooth and nail with MCFD to get her girls back. She did everything possible, everything. And then the social workers told her she wouldn't be able to get her girls back. And that crushed and broke her completely, and she gave up and lost hope. Delvina always called to check in with her family and to encourage them. She was a sous chef, and when her mom was sick, she took over making meals to hand out for free in the downtown east side. I met Ron Kulke when he was part of the downtown east side local area plan, and he started going to meetings at the Carnegie Action Project. He was always telling jokes and making people laugh, but very passionate about fighting for housing and safe drugs and against the war on the poor. He loved going to demonstrations. Ron died too soon because not only of poison drugs, but also social isolation and inadequate housing. His friend Vince says he thinks Ron would have wanted people to know that his life was claimed by the war on the poor that he'd been fighting for all of his life. I remember Ron because if he saw you coming down the street, it would be impossible to not get caught up in his huge bear hug. Patty Ellertson was a board member of Vandu, always helpful, sitting at the front desk, directing people to whatever they needed. She was kind and gentle, and friends say she never judged you. I used to chat with her on the bus as we both went home from our volunteer jobs in the downtown east side. So that's 1,716 precious lives lost in BC last year to poison drugs. Patty and Ron were 2 of them. We need safe supply and decriminalization yesterday, and Indigenous women need support to get their kids back or not to have them apprehended in the first place. I also wanted to apologize to the 25 or so folks who signed up to speak about the motion on real estate investment trusts at the last council meeting and then got cut off because of a timing issue. I know a lot of them would have been first-time speakers at council, that some of them attended a workshop to learn how to do it right, that they wrote speeches and practiced them and then couldn't do what they had worked on. I'm really sorry about this. I hope it won't happen again and that this experience won't deter them from signing up to speak again. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. Just for future, and thank you for the moving tributes, that would be really under other matters. So I don't see any other new business. And so I'm going to move on to, now I'm going to move on to inquiries and other matters. Councillor Weep.
Yeah, my first one is the dude chilling sign was taken, and I'm wondering if we can make sure that gets replaced as soon as possible. I know the city of Vancouver has a sign shop. Second one
Mr. Mayor, can I
Sure.
address that? That would be
Sure.
a park board matter, Councillor Weep, so we're happy to pass that along to them.
Okay, I forwarded it off to them. I just thought that it was our sign shop. Okay, that's fine. Second one is there's been some questions on the timing of the e-bike program. Do we have a report back on when that's coming to us? The bike share?
I can follow up with our engineering team on that, Councillor, and follow up with the council.
Thanks.
Perfect. And on I know last time I did an inquiry on the sandbags utilized for accessibility on Spanish Banks. I'm wondering when we'll get a report back on what can happen with the accessibility aspects of having sandbags during king tides to decrease the accessibility of those beaches.
Yeah, thanks for your patience on that, Councillor. So we are, staff are working on the inquiries that we received at your last meeting, and we're working to get those to you as quickly as we can.
Okay, and then I guess the
don't have a
last
specific timeline.
Oh, good. And then the last one's on the Burrard Inlet spill. Recognizing that it looks like Metro Vancouver is moving forward with a coordinated approach to watershed management. I'm just wondering, were we told about the spill, and what is our response to spills like that? Recognizing what we learned from the Marathassah and other oil spills in the region.
Sorry, Councillor, can you specify the spill you're speaking about?
There was one a couple of days ago in Burrard Inlet that the Tsleil-Waututh Nation reported. So I'm just wondering what our protocols are for spills and how we report that to our public.
Certainly, yeah. So we've done a lot of work around oil spills, Councillor, so I can follow up on that. I don't have the specifics on that particular spill and whether it had any impact on Vancouver, but I will I'll certainly check with our team and follow up.
Perfect. And then just one last thing, I might not be here, but the blue herring have just showed up at Stanley Park, and I think it's great for us to signify some of the amazing work that's being done by our park board staff to ensure that we have a healthy ecosystem. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Swanson. Oh, might be on mute there.
Yeah, I have an inquiry. We learned this week that Peter Wall gave $1 million to the Police Foundation, directed specifically at policing in the downtown east side. So my question is it legal for rich donors to specify what police-related function they want their money to support? Could they, for example, donate money to increase patrols in front of their mansions or to buy spiffy new police vehicles?
City Manager, I'm happy to offer some explanation first, if you want me to tackle that one, and then.
Yes, happy to refer that to you, Mayor Stewart.
Okay, I mean, it's a good question, Councillor Swanson. There is a police foundation that does collect donations from private individuals, and there are specific programs that that those funds can go toward. However, the operations of policing are the complete purview of the chief and his executive team. So not only can the foundation not influence the operations of the police, neither can the police board. The police board can review, can set general policies, but cannot send a bunch of officers to a particular place in the city. So I have been following this through the media, and I think there's a misconception of what's possible here, and I believe that has been explained to Mr. Wall a number of times. That said, it was a very generous donation to the Vancouver Foundation, and I think that the foundation is very grateful for those monies, although I believe they're just discussing through in what ways those monies can be spent, and of course not at all to influence the operations. So I hope that clarifies for you.
But the donor can specify what the money is for.
No, not if it affect operations.
So how is it that Peter Wall can say that that money is for specifically policing in the downtown east side?
He can say it, but it's not true.
That's interesting.
Yes, I hope that answers your question. Anything else?
No.
Okay, Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much. Mayor, I actually just have a question regarding the public piano program.
Okay.
I have received a number of emails from people who are interested, especially in COVID times, to get outside and use those pianos, but I can appreciate that there would be sanitary issues and things like that managing in this time. So I just wondered if there was a plan, or if City Manager can comment on what we can anticipate for the summer.
City Manager.
That's a great question, Councillor. I will check with our team and let you know kind of what we're thinking around that program.
Great, that's all for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Dejanova.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for my video. I'm having some technical difficulties. Just further follow up to Councillor Swanson's inquiry, and I just want to make sure on this. So, Mr. Mayor, perhaps these questions are best directed to you as chair of the police board, because you would have, I suppose, the closest connection with the Vancouver Police Foundation. But please let me know if you'd rather I send them in writing to our city manager to send to, I would suppose, the executive director or the board of the Police Foundation, which my first question, Mr. Mayor, is that's completely separate, that board and governance structure, to the Vancouver Police Board. Is that correct?
The foundation, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, the foundation is separate from the board.
Okay, and just wondered, Mr. Mayor, just because there was some comments made about the downtown east side, would some of the funding that I'm not going to suppose or debate what any private member of the public has said, but like, for instance, the Vancouver Police Foundation, they can support programs that have benefit in the downtown east side.
Absolutely, and they do lots of good work.
Okay, and do some of those programs include Sister Watch and lunches at the Carnegie Community Center?
They could, but you would probably know better than me on that one, on specific programs. But
I don't know. I'm just looking at their website, and I mean, I can't verify this. Again, you're the chair of the police board, and then also is with the structure of the police board and the foundation, is there a very clear, and I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, if it's a rule or if it's actually like in our charter or bylaws or somewhere in law that private individuals who want to donate privately can't invest towards something that the city must do as public safety. Like what they can do is invest in sort of a benefit under an umbrella of policing. But
it's actually very clear.
The operations.
Right, that's very clear in the Police Act.
I was hoping you might.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is outlined in the Police Act.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any
Did
other?
you want to share anything on that, or? I just wouldn't want people to think that they could fund a specific organization if they couldn't under a provincial act.
The foundation is very limited into what they can, what they can provide funding for, and those are really regulated by what's allowed under the Police Act. And I know there is a great relationship between the police board, the foundation, and the chief and his executive. So if there are misunderstandings, those are ironed out. But I believe that of course, all donations are welcome, but they are constrained by law.
So can I just ask, Mr. Mayor, in follow up to this, because I didn't know some of this information, would it be possible to get some information sent to all of council, on the Police Foundation and the benefits that they are funding?
Perhaps I could
and throughout our city?
Perhaps I could steer that to the city manager just to give some background information on perhaps from the board, the police, and the foundation as to the terms of their mandates and roles and responsibilities.
That would be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Mayor. Happy to follow up with them.
Okay, great. Anything else, Councillor Dejanova?
That's all for now.
Okay, next, Councillor Dominato. You might be on mute.
Mayor, a couple of inquiries through you to staff. One is just with respect to the work that was undertaken around reallocation of streets last year in light of the pandemic, and that was premised around making space for people to move and walk, and part of that was sort of identifying streets that were slow streets so that it could be shared use, so vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists. And I'm just wondering, we've heard concerns about the barriers that have been put up being either struck by vehicles, being moved, and if there's any efforts to look at that and other options for sort of designating those roads as slow streets that are a shared space. Maybe the city manager or others could comment.
City manager.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor, for the question. So yes, engineering is reviewing that program, and we will provide a report back to Council on that, and that's certainly one of the issues that we've heard.
Okay, that's fantastic. And then my second question is just with respect to our work in the area of reconciliation. The Métis Nation has been in touch with me with respect to concerns that we reflect on our public website around the fact that we have the 3 Coast Salish nations, and also the city is home to the Métis and Inuit. But in a recent job posting, there was no reference to acknowledgement of the Métis Nation in Vancouver. And I just wonder if we could get a memo outlining our work and relationship with Métis Nation BC.
Thanks. Yeah, Councillor, we can provide background on that.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Following up on the questions around public space, and I know that Council received a memo with regards to the patio program for this year, but I'm receiving quite a lot of inquiries with respect to free parklets and sort of the pop-up plazas. And I know that the memo received indicated that we'd be getting more information coming back on additional pop-up plaza opportunities for this year. Also getting inquiries about potentially parklets in different commercial areas that are not associated specifically with specific locations, so anybody can sit there. I'm wondering if staff can comment on the date of when we're expecting that back, given that luckily the weather's getting a bit nicer and the days are getting a little brighter and people are anxious to be outside.
City Manager.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, engineering is, and the team that's been involved with that program is working hard on getting back to you, Councillor. We understand the time sensitivity of that, so it would be in the second quarter, but we're looking to get it to you as quickly as we can. That's one of the things that I think staff are working on right now, is just the turnaround time for that. But we understand the interest in seeing it sooner rather than later.
Thanks, City Manager. I'm very glad to hear that, because I think with the continued COVID restrictions, that's something people are really looking forward to. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else on the queue, so that is it. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Seconder.
Councillor Bly?
Thank you, Councillor Bly. And just before I call a vote on this, we will be moving in camera. It is 11:08 by my clock. Clerks will need a couple of minutes to transition. Would 10, 15 minutes be okay for a break?
Mr. Mayor?
Just 1 second, please.
Mayor-
Clerk, I'm just checking with the clerks.
Mayor Stewart, we can convene at 11:15.
Okay, great. And Councillor DeGenova?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was trying to put myself on the queue, but I can't bring my panel up right now. So if you could add me, my question is there any chance we could start in camera at 1 p.m. as was originally considered? Was that something that could be?
Well, we do have an
considered
extra.
by council?
We were scheduled to go to noon for this meeting, and we have finished early. So so that it's we were scheduled for noon and then a break at 12 to 1, and then back in camera. Starting in camera early doesn't really, it's
I
kind
just
of a
know
bonus.
sometimes staff arrange their schedules around at that time. So
I think we're
thank
all
you
ready to
very
go.
much. That's fine.
Okay.
Great.
So all in favor of adjourning? Say yay.
Yay?
Yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Great, thanks, Council. So we are adjourned, and we will see you in camera at 11:15. Thanks.
Great, and we will be having a lunch break. Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
is that
at
right?
1 o'clock. Sorry, from 12 to 1.
No,
12 to 1.
12 to 1.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Great.